My parents said the greatest gift for your sister's wedding is if you disappear from our family forever. I didn't beg, packed my things, took the keys, walked out the door, closing like a final punctuation mark. The next day, I sold the apartment and froze the joint account. I, 32M, stood in the kitchen of what I thought was my childhood home, listening to my mother tell me that the best wedding gift I could give my sister would be to vanish from the family permanently. My father nodded along, arms crossed, looking at me like I was something unpleasant he'd found stuck to his shoe. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply turned around, walked to my room, and started packing. The thing about being the black sheep is that you spend years convincing yourself it's not real, that you're imagining the preferential treatment, the subtle digs, the way conversations shift when you enter a room. But when your own parents spell it out for you with such casual cruelty, there's a strange relief in it. The pretending was finally over. My sister's wedding was 3 weeks away. She was marrying some finance guy with a trust fund and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from marble. My parents had been planning this event for 8 months like it was a royal coronation. The venue alone cost more than I made in a year. Everything had to be perfect, and apparently, I was the imperfection they needed to erase. I had always been different from my sister. She was the golden child, the one who followed the script perfectly. Good grades, right college, right career, right friends, right boyfriend. I had taken a different path, dropped out of the pre-med program they had planned for me, worked odd jobs, eventually started my own small renovation business. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine, and I was good at it. That was my first crime. My second was refusing to apologize for it. The apartment I was packing up had been my grandmother's. She left it to me when she died 4 years ago, the only person in the family who ever seemed to understand me. My parents had tried to convince her to put it in a family trust instead, but she was stubborn. She wanted me to have something of my own. The joint account I shared with my father was something we'd set up years ago for a business investment that never materialized. I kept meaning to close it, but inertia and foolish hope kept it open. Foolish hope that maybe we were still a family. I packed methodically. Clothes, documents, laptop, the few things that mattered. My mother appeared in the doorway at some point, asking what I was doing. I told her I was giving them exactly what they asked for. She started to say something about being dramatic, about how I always overreacted, but I cut her off. I asked her if she meant what she said. She hesitated, then said that the wedding was important and my presence would just create tension. My sister had apparently told them she'd be uncomfortable with me there. Something about how I always made everything about myself. That was rich, considering I'd barely spoken to my sister in 2 years. Our last real conversation had been about the business loan I'd asked my father for, the one he refused after 5 minutes of consideration. She'd called me entitled for even asking, said I needed to grow up and stop expecting handouts. I had never asked them for anything before that, and I never would again after. But somehow, in her narrative, I was the family burden. I finished packing by midnight. My father had gone to bed. My mother sat in the living room, pretending to watch television, occasionally glancing toward my room like she expected me to come out and apologize. I didn't. When I emerged with my bags, she stood up and started talking about how we could discuss this rationally in the morning. I told her there was nothing to discuss. She'd made it clear where I stood. She tried to pivot, saying they were just stressed about the wedding, that maybe I was taking things too personally. I asked her point blank if she wanted me gone. She couldn't look at me when she said that maybe some distance would be good for everyone. That was all I needed to hear. I loaded my car in 3 trips. The building was quiet, just the sound of my footsteps echoing in the stairwell. I drove to a motel on the edge of town, checked in, and lay awake on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling. The anger would come later. Right then, I just felt hollow. The next morning, I called my lawyer, the same one who had handled my grandmother's estate. I explained the situation and asked what I could do about the apartment. He reminded me that it was mine, titled in my name alone. I could sell it whenever I wanted. I asked how fast. He said if I was serious and willing to price it right, maybe 2 weeks. I told him to start the process immediately. Then I called the bank about the joint account. My father and I were both signers, which meant I had full authority to freeze it. The representative asked if I was sure, mentioned something about how this might complicate things. I told her I was very sure. She processed the request. The account had about $40,000 in it, money from various sources over the years. My father had been using it as a secondary account for investments and expenses. Freezing it wouldn't ruin him, but it would definitely inconvenience him. My phone started ringing around 10 that morning. First my mother, then my father, then my sister. I let them all go to voicemail. I listened to the messages later. My mother sounded panicked, asking what I'd done, saying we needed to talk. My father was angry, demanding I call him back immediately, threatening legal action. My sister's message was the most telling. She didn't ask what happened. She just said I was being selfish and childish, that I was trying to ruin her wedding, that she always knew I was jealous of her. I deleted all 3 messages and blocked their numbers. The apartment sold in 11 days. A young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the location and the space, didn't even try to negotiate on price. My lawyer handled everything. The closing was quick and clean. After fees and taxes, I walked away with about $230,000. Added to my existing savings, it was enough to start over somewhere new. I spent those 11 days working. My business could operate from anywhere, and I already had a few clients who didn't care where I was based as long as I delivered quality work. I started researching cities I'd always wanted to visit but never had time for. Places where nobody knew my family, where I could build something without their shadow hanging over me. My sister's wedding came and went. I knew the date because it was impossible to forget after months of hearing about nothing else. I spent that day hiking in a state park 200 miles away, my phone turned off, breathing air that didn't taste like disappointment. I wondered if they noticed my absence or if they were just relieved. I wondered if my sister was happy. I hoped she was. Despite everything, I didn't hate her. I just didn't want to be around her anymore. Update 1. It's been 4 months since I walked out. I'm writing this from a small rental house in a city I'd never even visited before. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and nobody here knows anything about my family or their expectations. The first few weeks after the wedding were quiet. Too quiet. Then my mother found a way around the block and sent me an email. It was long and rambling, full of justifications about stress and wedding planning and how I'd misunderstood everything. She said my father was furious about the account and the apartment, that I'd embarrassed them. She said my sister cried when she found out what I'd done, that I'd cast a shadow over her special day. She ended by saying that if I apologized and made things right, we could move past this as a family. I didn't respond. 2 weeks later, my father sent a letter through my lawyer. It was a formal demand to unfreeze the joint account and compensate him for lost investment opportunities. My lawyer wrote back explaining that I had every legal right to freeze an account I was a signer on, and that my father was welcome to pursue legal action if he wished, but it would be expensive and unlikely to succeed. We never heard back. My sister tried a different approach. She created a fake social media account and sent me a message saying she just wanted to talk, that she missed me, that family was important. I could see through it immediately. The writing style, the phrases she used, they were pure her. I blocked that account too. What surprised me was who did reach out genuinely. My uncle, my father's younger brother, called me out of the blue. We'd never been particularly close, but he'd always been kind. He asked if I was okay, said he'd heard bits and pieces of what happened. I gave him the short version. He was quiet for a long moment, then told me he wasn't surprised. He said my parents had always played favorites, that he'd watched it happen for years, but felt it wasn't his place to intervene. He apologized for that. We talked for over an hour. He didn't try to convince me to reconcile. He just listened. Before we hung up, he told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. It was the first time anyone in my family had said anything like that to me. My business grew. Turns out, not having the constant weight of family dysfunction freed up a lot of mental energy. I took on bigger projects, hired a part-time assistant, started bidding on commercial renovations. The work was good, and I was making more money than I ever had. I bought better tools, rented a small workspace, built a reputation in my new city. I also started therapy. That probably should have been the first thing I did, but it took me a while to admit I needed it. My therapist helped me work through years of feeling like I was never enough, of constantly trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it. She helped me see patterns I'd been blind to. The way my parents would praise my sister's minor accomplishments, but dismiss my major ones. The way they'd always frame my choices as failures rather than different paths. The way they'd taught me to apologize for existing. One session, my therapist asked me what I would say to my parents if I could say anything without consequences. I told her I'd ask them why I was never enough, why nothing I did mattered, why they had children if one of them was always going to be disposable. She asked me if I thought I'd ever get satisfying answers to those questions. I admitted I probably wouldn't. She told me that was okay, that I didn't need their answers to move forward. That was a turning point. Update 2. It's been 8 months now. My life has settled into something I never expected. Normalcy. I wake up without dread. I work on projects I care about. I've made friends who like me for who I am, not who they think I should be. It's strange and wonderful, and sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Last month, my mother showed up at my workplace. I don't know how she found me. Maybe my uncle told her, though I doubt it. Maybe she hired someone. She walked in while I was meeting with a client, looked around at the workspace I'd built, the tools, the projects in progress. The client excused themselves, sensing the tension. My mother stood there for a moment, taking it all in, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was realizing I'd actually built something, that I wasn't struggling or begging to come home. She started by saying she was glad to see me doing well. Then she pivoted to how much they missed me, how the family wasn't the same without me. She said my sister was pregnant, that I was going to be an uncle, that surely I wanted to be part of that. She said my father was willing to forget about the account situation if I'd just come home for a visit. She made it sound so reasonable, like I was the one being stubborn over nothing. I asked her if she remembered what she said to me that night in the kitchen. She looked confused, said a lot of things were said in the heat of the moment. I repeated her exact words back to her. The greatest gift I could give my sister was to disappear from the family forever. She flinched but recovered quickly, claiming I was twisting her words, that she never meant it literally. I asked her what other way there was to interpret that statement. She didn't have an answer. I told her I'd given her exactly what she asked for. I had disappeared. I had given my sister the wedding gift she wanted. And in doing so, I'd given myself something too, freedom. My mother's face cycled through several emotions. Hurt, anger, disbelief. She said I was throwing away my family over pride. I corrected her. I said I was protecting myself from people who made me feel worthless. There's a difference. She tried one more angle, tears forming in her eyes. She talked about how parents make mistakes, how we were still family, how I was being cruel by cutting them off. I felt the old guilt trying to surface, that familiar urge to comfort her, to make things okay. But I'd done enough therapy to recognize manipulation when I saw it. I told her she was welcome to leave. She stood there for another minute, maybe hoping I'd break, then walked out without another word. I didn't hear from anyone for 3 weeks after that. Then my sister sent a message through a mutual acquaintance. She was 8 weeks pregnant, wanted to know if I'd be willing to meet her for coffee. No parents, just the two of us. The acquaintance said my sister seemed genuine. I thought about it for 2 days before responding. I agreed to meet, mostly because I was curious. Maybe also because some part of me still hoped we could salvage something, even if it was just a civil distance. We met at a neutral coffee shop. She looked good, glowing in that way pregnant women supposedly glow. We sat across from each other, and the silence was heavy. She started by congratulating me on my business, said she'd looked me up online and was impressed. I thanked her. Then she got to the point. She said she understood why I left, that she'd had time to think about things. She admitted that the wedding planning had brought out the worst in everyone, including her. She said she never actually told our parents she didn't want me there, that they'd made that decision on their own and blamed her for it later. I asked her why she didn't say anything that night. She said she didn't know I'd left until the next morning, that by then I'd already blocked everyone. I asked about her voicemail, the one where she called me selfish and jealous. She looked down at her coffee, said she'd been angry and scared. Our parents had been furious, blaming her for pushing me away, and she'd lashed out at me instead of them. It was easier. I appreciated the honesty, but it didn't change much. I told her I was glad she was doing well, that I hoped she'd be happy with her family. But I wasn't ready to come back, might never be ready. She asked if there was anything that could fix this. I told her the truth. Our parents broke something fundamental when they told me to disappear. Even if she wasn't the one who said it, she didn't defend me either. She didn't call me after. She didn't check if I was okay. She just accepted my absence and moved on. She started crying then, quietly, wiping at her eyes. She said she was sorry, that she'd been a terrible sister, that she wished she could go back and do things differently. I believed her. I also knew it didn't matter. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together the same way. I told her I forgave her, because holding on to anger was exhausting. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. She nodded, understanding without accepting. We finished our coffee and stilted small talk. She told me a bit about the pregnancy, her husband, their plans. I told her a little about my business, the city I'd moved to. It was the conversation of two acquaintances, not siblings. When we left, she hugged me. I hugged her back. Then we walked to our separate cars and drove away in opposite directions. Update 3. It's been just over a year now since I walked out. I'm sitting in my own place, a small house I bought 3 months ago. It's the first property I've ever owned outright, and I renovated it myself. Every room reflects decisions I made for me, not for anyone else's approval. My business is thriving. I hired 2 full-time employees, and we're booked solid for the next 4 months. I'm bidding on projects I would never have had the confidence to pursue a year ago. Turns out, when you're not constantly second-guessing yourself because your family treats you like a failure, you can actually accomplish things. I haven't heard from my parents in months. My sister sent a birth announcement when the baby came. A boy. She included a handwritten note saying the door was open if I ever wanted to meet my nephew. I sent a gift card and a polite card back. Maybe someday I'll be ready for more than that. Today isn't that day. The uncle who called me has become a regular presence in my life. We get dinner once a month when he's in town for work. He tells me stories about my dad as a kid, helps me understand that the dysfunction goes back generations. It doesn't excuse anything, but it provides context. He also assures me that I made the right choice, that staying would have slowly destroyed me. I've started dating someone. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice. She knows the basic outline of what happened with my family, but doesn't push for details. She seems to like me for who I am now, not who I was trying to be for people who would never be satisfied. It's refreshing. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd swallowed my pride, apologized for existing, shown up at the wedding with a smile plastered on. I'd probably still be in that apartment, still be tied to that joint account, still be waiting for crumbs of approval that would never come. I'd be smaller, dimmer, less myself. The thing nobody tells you about walking away from family is how much lighter you feel once the guilt fades. For months, I carried this weight of wondering if I'd made a mistake, if I was being too harsh, if blood really did mean I owed them endless chances. But therapy and time taught me that I don't owe anyone access to me, especially people who made me feel like I was fundamentally flawed. I'm not going to pretend it's all perfect. There are moments, usually holidays or late at night, when I feel the absence of family. When I wonder what it would be like to have parents who were proud of me, a sister who actually knew me. But those moments pass, and I'm left with the life I've built. A life where I'm enough exactly as I am. Last week, I got an email from my father. It was short, formal, almost businesslike. He said he'd been doing some thinking, that perhaps everyone had overreacted. He suggested we meet to discuss putting the past behind us. I read it 3 times, looking for an apology or acknowledgement of what actually happened. There wasn't one. Just the implication that if I'd stopped being difficult, we could all move forward. As if I was the problem. As if telling your child to disappear forever was just a minor disagreement. I didn't respond. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe there's a more mature way to handle it. But I've learned that I don't owe anyone a response, especially when the message is just another attempt to rewrite history. So here I am, a year later, building a business, building a life, building myself into someone I actually like. I'm not waiting for permission or approval anymore. I'm not trying to earn my place in spaces where I was never wanted. I'm just existing, fully and completely, in a life that's entirely mine. The door they told me to walk through closed behind me, and I'm not interested in knocking to get back in. I found better doors, better rooms, better people. And honestly, I've never been happier. If there's anything I'd tell someone in a similar situation, it's this. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and sometimes you are the trash taking itself out. Either way, walking away from people who make you feel worthless isn't giving up. It's waking up. And what you build on the other side might just be the best thing you ever do. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real-life-based stories. Thanks in advance.